There are that's it, 6 more days until America goes to the polls. And remember, voting is the only way, it's the best way to truly have your voice in our government. And if you think your vote doesn't count, you're wrong. Just look at Hillary Clinton's loss in the state of Pennsylvania by just over 68,000 votes, or North Dakota, Senator Heidi Heitkamp's 2012 win margin, less than 3,000. Right now, the Cook Political Report ranks one Democratic House seat as a toss-up. Minnesota's first congressional district, currently held by Tim Walz, who is not seeking re-election.
Okay, one Democratic House seat is a toss-up. On the Republican side, there are 28 congressional districts that Cook ranks in the toss-up category, including 6 which are open. Nationwide, Cook ranks 50 races as a toss-up, including 12 governor's mansions and 9 Senate seats. The president is taking notice of this. He's making 11 stops in 8 different states between now and election day, holding rallies from Montana to Florida, stumping for Republican candidates.
In just a few hours, the president will be in the state of Florida holding a rally in the city of Estero, which is on the Gulf Coast, where people there have been lining up since last night. He will be working to get voters to the polls for his candidates there. Governor Rick Scott, who's now running for the Senate, and Ron DeSantis, who is hoping to replace Scott as governor. And these races are tight. Remember DeSantis, that campaign ad? He had his toddler building a wall in a Make America Great Again onesie, reading a baby book version of The Art of the Deal.
I mean, we're really all about your kids understanding politics early. That was just weird. All right, so here's the contest between Rick Scott, who trails the incumbent Democratic Senator Bill Nelson by just 2 points in a recent USA Today Suffolk University poll. That's well within the margin of error. Scott is losing the lead that he took back in the summer, and Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum is ahead of DeSantis by just 1 point in the race for governor, both of which are within the margin of error.
All right, well, the Tampa Bay Times political editor, Adam Smith, joins us now in St. Petersburg, Florida. All right, Adam, this is your lane. What's surprising you the most about these races?
Well, what's surprising is both sides. There's been all this talk about a giant Democratic wave, and we're seeing very fired up Democrats, big turnout among people who have already voted. But we're also seeing that on the Republican side. So I think our 2 marquee races, governor and Senate, really are toss-ups.
Influences the other, Adam. Does enthusiasm for Gillum help Bill Nelson running for Senate? Is the other way around? Are they not related?
Help Rick Scott running for Senate. No?
Well, with Bill Nelson running against.
Sorry.
In other words, who depends on whom to get the turnout required to win?
Yeah, I think if Bill Nelson is able to squeak this out, he will owe a huge debt of gratitude to Andrew Gillum, because Andrew Gillum is really exciting the base of the Democratic Party in a way that I've been doing this a long time, and I haven't seen crowds like Andrew Gillum gets ever in a midterm.
All right, well, the thing is, Gillum was not the biggest name in the Democratic Party. For many of us, at least on the national level, we didn't know this guy. What is pushing his numbers up? This enthusiasm that you talk about, where does it come from?
You know, it's really interesting because there was a very crowded, very competitive Democratic primary, and most people really wrote Gillum off. And this was a case. Florida is such a big state that TV ads usually decide these races. In this case, Gillum really did go county to county to little groups of a dozen or more. And he is a very personable, very authentic guy. People really connected with him. And his liberal message really fired up the base that was tired of the Democrats repeatedly nominating sort of milquetoast centrists.
So let's talk about how these races sometimes, these important local races, can feel nationalized. We've talked about it in Texas. But in Florida, that's kind of the case. There are a lot of people from outside Florida, for a lot of reasons. One is that a lot of people from outside Florida spend their winters in Florida, but there's a lot of money and energy and the president going in there to help these candidates win. Good or bad for Florida voters?
You know, the bad part for Florida voters is if you don't like TV ads, you're out of luck, because that's all we see in some of these markets. I'm in Tampa Bay, that is usually the #1 market in the country during presidentials. #2 is Orlando. So it's interesting. They're sending Trump to very much Republican strongholds. Fort Myers area, where he'll be in a few hours, that is hardcore Republican country, and they are having monster turnout in that area. Huge early voting turnout.
I got to ask you about this. Gun control. Gun control ranks dead last on both polls, below 10%. Has the energy worn off? I mean, Parkland, the Parkland shooting happened in your state last year.
Yeah, you know, you see that number, and I always wonder, well, what side is it? You know, are you pro-gun control or anti-gun control? But there's no question that healthcare is the #1 issue, as it is elsewhere.
Yep.
But I will say, anecdotally, I see a lot of people, volunteers, who tell me they're on the Democratic side, who say they're volunteering on a campaign for the first time ever, and it's because of Parkland.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting case. It may mean that you may still want to cast your ballot on the basis of gun control, but you're not saying it's a more important issue than the economy or health care, but it still may be the thing that influences you go to the polls, particularly if you're a young person. Adam, good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Adam Smith with the Tampa Bay Times. All right, we're just 6 days before the midterms. The committee charged with electing House Republicans is condemning one of their own. I heard you talking about this earlier.
Please pay attention to this. That Republican is Iowa Congressman Steve King. King reportedly told the Washington Post members of an Austrian group with historical ties to Nazis would be Republicans if they lived in the U.S. National Republican Congressional Campaign Chairman Congressman Steve Stivers of Ohio blasted King's comments, calling them, quote, completely inappropriate, adding, "We must stand up against white supremacy and hate in all forms, and I strongly condemn this behavior."
So King is known to say a lot of things that can be very inflammatory and
Ali?
Yeah.
He retweeted a Nazi sympathizer asking the question.
Let's show the picture. This is a picture he tweeted from his annual pheasant hunt, saying different breeds of dogs indicated diversity. Earlier this month, President Trump campaigned for King, by the way, who's long known for his inflammatory rhetoric.
The deaths of thousands who have been killed at the hands of illegal aliens in America.
Where did any other subgroup of people contribute more to civilization?
Than white people?
Than Western civilization itself, that's rooted in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and the United States of America, and every place where the footprint of Christianity settled the world.
Okay. He retweeted about what, from a Nazi sympathizer asking what the value of diversity is. I'm going to tell you, as a public school girl from New Jersey, the value of diversity for me is that I have the education and career opportunities and the life that I lead. That's the value, Steve King.
If this country didn't value diversity, I may not be here. I'm an immigrant. I'm a double immigrant to another country that also valued diversity. I mean, I can't even understand how that question is asked, but it's asked. So
I understand why it's asked. If you are insecure about your position and worried about different people, smart people, insightful people coming forward, it's disappointing for our kids that our leaders say things like that. Now, though,
it assumes it's a zero-sum game, right? That if somebody else benefits, you must lose an equal amount, as opposed to, wow, why don't I find out about people's beliefs, their cultures, their food, their way of thinking, their political views, and why doesn't that enrich my way of thinking? I may never come around to your opinion on something, but what if I hear it and I'm able to argue with you better about it and able to respect it?
Together we do rise, Mr. King. Now he's hitting back at the media and his own party, saying their ultimate goal is to flip the House and impeach Donald Trump. Establishment never Trumpers are complicit.
Wow.
So it's his own party who has said this is inappropriate. Enough is enough.
There are, sadly,
this has nothing to do with politics.
No, and by the way, you and I had a conversation yesterday with Adam Greenblatt of the Anti-Defamation League, who was saying that there are six more. I'm sorry, Jonathan Greenblatt. Yeah, who said that there were 6? Did he say 6 or 9 white nationalists running for office under the Republican flag in this election? And
I'm just not sure why Republicans don't say, nope, I don't want to associate myself with this.
Can't run under our flag.
It doesn't make any sense.
We don't do that. We don't do that. The Republicans whom I know who are my friends are not nationalists, who are not racist. They're nothing. They would like lower taxes. They would like smaller government. Some of these things I agree with them on. Some of them I don't. They're not racists.
But that's the same argument. Those who, when the president calls himself a nationalist and they say, oh, Allie, that's not a dog whistle. He's calling himself a patriot.
Not today.
It's not a patriot.
Not today.
In today's day and age, you're not saying it in a bubble. And if you are the president, if you have the honor of the Oval Office, do better.
Yep.
Say things that are better. No dog whistles.
They lead to very dangerous places. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.